It's designed to wake you up, right? Have that feeling of like, damn, that's my life. That's me.
And I have no problem being naked in front of the
Like,
world.
wow, diving right into the fire. Why don't we?
It's Rania here, your host on The Healing Train, a podcast designed to help you lighten your load, release whatever is weighing you down, and reconnect with yourself. Whether it's a toxic relationship, childhood wounds that never healed, struggling with self-forgiveness, or on a healing journey, it's time we have these uncomfortable conversations. Let's dive deep with experts and professionals in psychology, health and wellness, and alternative healing, and also ordinary people that have been there. It may just be the fresh perspective you need to support your journey. You could even be a guest on this show. This is a space for sharing stories, a safe stop where you can pause, recharge, and know you're not alone. So take a deep breath, settle in, and join me on today's ride as we explore the path to healing together. Hop on board the healing train. Today on the healing train, we have with us Diamond Drip. Diamond is a best-selling, award-winning author, coach, and speaker who's all about helping women ditch self-doubt and embrace their true selves. With a background in visual communications and brand strategy, Diamond discovered the game-changing world of human design and gene keys. Now, she's passionate about showing others how to trust their gut and tap into their full potential. Diamond's own journey from stressed out entrepreneur to confident leader has been featured on KQED Radio in New York Weekly, Medium, and as a guest on several podcasts. Her favorite saying, "The limit doesn't exist, but fear and self-doubt will make you think it does." Let's dive deeper with Diamond, who loves to talk about uncomfortable subjects. Diamond, welcome to the show.
It is so awesome to be here with you and our listeners.
Diamond, I always like to start with a little quotation and then we get right into our topic. So today I have a post by Ivory Nicole, and she says, "I stopped blaming others. I started owning my mistakes and being accountable. I started reflecting over my own actions, words, patterns, and behaviors. I started changing myself instead of changing the world. I started admitting where I was wrong. I realized it's not always the others. When you are always pointing fingers at others, you forget to clean up your mess." Wow, Diamond. So we're starting off deep, okay? I'm going to admit, all right, confession time here, that
Right.
I was one of those people once upon a time, blaming others, pointing the fingers, and falling into what you want to call a victimhood state, like this person did this to me, but with a lot of inner work and a lot of modalities, I am who I am today. All right. And I'm not perfect. I'm still working on myself. I still catch myself. But tell me, can you relate to what I just said and to what we just read?
Not at all. I don't feel called out in any way whatsoever. Um, no, it's funny because it literally, and it just reminds me of one of the universal laws that we are all one. We're just having our own experience of, this incarnation.
Mm-hmm.
And so like literally for me, what came up, that's the work that I'm doing right now. So it's like, wow, diving right into the fire. Why don't we? With this quote, at the center, one of my core wounds is the shadow of dishonor into the gift of graciousness, which is a very internal, into the highest frequency of grace, which is external. And when you listen to the contemplation about dishonor, the founder of Gene Keys, he talks about how we dishonor ourselves by making ourselves the victim. know, this person did this to me. The weather is this way. And so now I'm having a bad day, and all of these different components. And it's like when we stop and we actually take personal responsibility, especially us, because, and we're going to talk about this later, but with the 5 line energy that we both have, like we are karmic mirrors for people. So a lot of times the things that we see in other people that we're like that's something that needs to be healed, or vice versa. People see things in us that's like, I don't know, how can you be so that way? And it triggers something in them that they need to heal. So, and just, we started out just right where we need to be.
I love it. I love it. Let's talk about what you do, your specialty, the human design. Okay. It's a term that's been going around lately. Some people know what it is, some people don't know what it is. And we're going to get into that in a second. But I'm going to ask you, would you say that discovering human design helped you in your journey?
It was the missing piece from my journey, both in a business context, because I was trying to figure out what my business superpower was. What's the thing that sets me apart online and in all of the noise and saturation?
Mm-hmm.
And then in my personal journey, I had done a clinical trial that looked at psilocybin, which is the active component in magic mushrooms, and how it can heal depression. And so that was in August of 22. And so in that experience, I connected with my higher self. And she was just so gracious and so trusting and divine timing, and so just in flow. And so I was on a personal journey to figure out, like, how can I be more like her? Like, her is me. How can I do that in this world and not in like spiritual mushroom land? So
hence the mushrooms behind you. And if you are just listening, not watching this, I'd like to briefly explain the background Diamond has behind her, which is a huge mushroom and then little mushrooms underneath, and some sort of a pathway leading to a mysterious land. It actually is so beautiful. I loved it the moment I saw it. Thank you for having such a beautiful background.
I received that. Thank you.
All right. So now there are some people who are familiar with what human design is and some aren't. So can we break it down in as much layman terms as possible, but then feel free to also use big terms that we need to learn. Go for it.
So the simplest way that I can explain human design is it helps life make sense. And what I mean by that.
Okay. That's quite layman terms.
Right? That's the layman way
it.
that I can put that. And what I mean by that, and I love that we're going to talk about healing, is we came into this world with a soul curriculum, with a life purpose, if you will. And along the way, we lost sight of that. We learned these stories of how it's supposed to work here in this world and what you're supposed to do in order to be loved and to be valuable. And those stories, especially depending on some of the conditioning and the openness of our centers in human design, it can really, right? The analogy that's given is like, imagine going to a masquerade ball. And yes, the mask is light, right? The mask that we're holding up, right? We're talking, but towards the end of the night, our arms get tired. And we have to take the mask down at some point and just be who we are. Yes. And so human design, it really helps us just be who we are. And not only that, but not make ourselves wrong for it, not try to change anything, to just kind of accept that this is who we are. And if we just lean into that, if we trust that the next right step will show up for us instead of trying to control everything like we're taught to.
Yep.
We can have the most amazing lives that we never could have even dreamed of, right? It's so that's the best way that I can describe human design, is it gives context whenever there's something that I don't understand in myself, or especially now that I'm out in the world, I don't understand about someone else. Like if I know you for 10 minutes and I feel like your vibe is good, I'll be like, do you know your time of birth? Because maybe we can look at some things.
It just kicks in. You can't help yourself, right? No, I get you. I get you. So would you say then now that we're just talking generally about it,
Mhm.
would you say knowing our human design can help us in our day-to-day life, like practically? How do we use it? Would it help us with our decision making when it comes to our cycles of perhaps being in toxic, unhealthy relationships, the things that we end up accepting, our fears, our doubts, our self-worth, right? Can human design, if we were to understand what our design is, help us in that practically?
Absolutely. So, in my business, there's really three pillars of the work that I do, and it's business, it's life, and it's parenting and reparenting. So, in business, especially when it comes to decision making, we are inundated all the time with all of the different things that we can do to make our business successful.
Mm-hmm.
There's umpteenth marketing strategies and
Yeah.
social media strategies, and so when you're clear on your decision making process, when you're able to filter out through the noise of everything that's around you
Mm-hmm.
and just trust, like, ooh, actually, that lit me up. And instead of figuring out the how, waiting for the next right step to come, because who knows, you might go to a webinar and maybe that offer that they met at that webinar, it didn't really resonate with you. But you're like, I like this idea. I'm going to wait. And you just trust. And then maybe something else comes into your ecosystem. And you're like, ooh, this feels right. Because human design is all about getting you out of your head
Mm-hmm.
and into your body, because our bodies have so much wisdom that we are not tapping into because we're focused on what's going on up here.
Yeah. All about the mind.
So
But the
exactly,
intellect is more like we're talking about the intellect.
right. Intellect, logic, right? The practice, the those types of things. And so that's in business. In life, we we I'll call myself out a little bit. We know there are things that we have to work on in order for us to just feel more well-being in our everyday.
Mm-hmm.
But then we go in the world and we get tired and, we get stressed. And by the end of it, sometimes, especially when you're moving through your day and you're not in your awareness, you can feel really drained sometimes at the end of the day and you don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is we tell ourselves, I'm going to read that book tonight before I go to bed. I'm not going to watch Netflix. I'm going to read that book that I know that I need to read.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes and you're like, okay, I'm too tired. I'll just do it tomorrow. So human design, it helps you have that awareness as you move throughout your day so that you're making conscious choices
Choices. I love that.
about your energy so
Mm-hmm.
that at the end of the day, you're not too tired to do the thing that you know is going to help you. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to have the time because it's already in your ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is parenting and reparenting. And this is a really big one. I couldn't just leave it at parenting because in order to raise happy, healthy children, my daughter is 7, we have to first know what our own triggers are from our upbringing,
Yeah.
because otherwise we're just going to project
Pass
that
it on.
onto them.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then, that creates dynamics, conflict, emotions flaring. And then there's even more reparenting that you have to do because then, like, especially with the narrative that we live in sometimes, if your child is bad, then that means that you're a bad parent. And then you start trying to overprove yourself and doing all of these things that are out of character. Some people even find themselves becoming the very thing that they didn't want to, which was their parent. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't even realize it. So in those practical ways, just having the awareness of your design, of the people around you's design, can be so instrumental.
Mm-hmm. I just one thing stuck out with what you're saying is to make conscious choices.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's anything, whoever is listening to this today about human design is the first time for you getting acquainted, understand that you have the ability to make a conscious choice. You could do it without human design, and that's fine. But with human design, even better, because you get to know, can we say, some weak spots in our personalities, right? Is that fair to say? Yeah.
Oh,
So I am no expert. So I'd like for you, if you can, walk us through an example of somebody's human design. And when I say somebody's, I volunteered. to be the guinea pig today. And you're welcome to use my human design. I have no problem being naked in front of the world as to who I am, because regardless, I'm doing this podcast and I share a lot about myself anyways. And I have no problem being vulnerable and just showing up being authentically me. There's nothing to hide here. So please, with whatever knowledge you got about me and my date of birth and my personality, walk us through a little bit.
I love this so much, especially because, like I said, I have this for our listeners. I have this habit of overly nerding out if I have all of the information of the chart.
Yeah.
So I just ask for a few simple details.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like 5 things.
That's okay.
So,
we're good.
As I walk through your chart, what I see is that you're a manifesting generator. And so you are hybrid energy, actually, of 2 energies. So manifestors and generators.
Mhm.
Generators have this sacral battery that allows them, when they're doing the right work, that lights them up to just go and go and go and go and go and go and go. And when we're aligned, we don't burn out. We can just keep going. And so we make up I'm also a generator. That's why I keep saying we. I'm not a manifesting generator, but I'm a generator.
Okay.
And so we
got
make
something in
up,
common, so that's good.
exactly. So we make up about 70% of the population. And so what happens, and this goes into manifestors, manifestors are what we call a non-energy type sometimes, or non-sacral type, because they don't have that definition in their part of their chart. And so with manifestors, they are here to be our catalysts, our initiators. They are here to have that divine download and be able to verbalize it to someone, inform someone about this idea. And for manifestors, that's usually where it stops. Like they inform and then they keep going and they keep creating. And so obviously to bring these things to life, they usually require like a team or a partner, because they don't have that sacral definition to keep going. You have the best of both worlds.
Oh my goodness.
So you have you have the manifestor spark energy, and you have the energy to sustain it. And so that's where these other pieces of, okay, well, since we have all this energy, since we can sustain the creation of all these ideas, right? We all know, as just humans on this planet, how much inspiration is around us. So now what we have is the opportunity for a lot of ideas, not knowing which ones to finish, and then just kind of being all over. And so that even brings in the 3-5 profile, because the 3 line is the experimenter. You are here to play, to get in there, to get your hands dirty. While
have I done that? Sorry, continue. I just that one caught me.
No, you're fine. I love this juxtaposition, actually, because I'm a 5-1 and you're a 3-5. And so this is perfect, because whereas I am like knee deep in the manual, doing the research, investigating, right, going down rabbit holes, you're like, that seems like a lot of energy. I'd rather just go and do the thing and figure out.
Yep, I'll figure it out.
Yes. And that's beautiful, because either way, our 5 line gets to shine with what we know, whether it's through research or through experience. The 5 line is the solutions person. In quantum human design, we're the visionary leader. And so what we get to do with this energy is, we get to provide solutions for the right people. From, through your experiences, hands-on, you're going to have some things that you can recommend to people. And through my rabbit holes, I'm going to have some things that I can recommend to people. And one of the things that I always find it important to mention with the 5th line energy is that it's kind of a projected energy. And that, so projector is another energy type, which we didn't talk about because we're only talking about your chart. But with this projector energy, for them, typically, for projectors, their strategy is to wait for the recognition, right, of their wisdom, and then be invited to share it. Otherwise, they exert a lot of energy trying to be heard by people who aren't meant for them. And so that type of energy, that recognition, invitation, deciding what projections are right for you, this 5th line carries this energy. And so what can happen is sometimes people will project onto us that we can help them with something that actually we can't. it's just kind of in our aura. And the example that I always like to give is like when you're in the grocery store, and especially Target, right? Because they have a uniform. And I'm just like minding my business. And someone's like, hey, do you know where this thing is? And I'm like, no, I don't work here. I'm not wearing a red shirt. So no, I don't know. But that my aura just kind of, she knows something.
You know, that happened to me a few times. Damn. Yeah. And I'm like, I actually took it negatively, thinking, do I look like, like what, like the way I'm dressed, is it giving away something here? But yeah, I mean, I guess I shouldn't take it negatively. I should take it positively. There's an aura
Technically,
about
yes,
me
it is
that
the way you're
someone
dressed.
feels that they can trust me to ask me a question, right? I'm that approachable. So
Yeah.
instead of thinking of it as like, who do you think I am, right?
Because technically it is the way you're dressed. It's the way your aura is dressed. There's nothing you can do to change the aura.
Stuck with it. Okay, that's all right.
Right. So now we're here with the projections and the character role and how we show up. And so that brings in your authority, right? So we both have emotional authority. And as generators, what that means for us is our sacral, it has that initial, ooh, yes, I want to do that. I have the energy to sustain that. Or like, nah, that doesn't light me up. No. And so when you have the emotional authority piece of that, because sacral is an authority of its own. But when you have definition in your solar plexus, that definition is so strong that it now becomes the authority for your entire chart. Even if you had mental definition, and we know how strong our brains can like make, but the solar plexus. And so with emotional authority, we'll have that initial decision like uh-huh or uh-uh. And then it's just for us to sleep on it, to make sure that as we ride our wave, so tracking our wave is really important. Knowing the rhythms of our wave, our ups, our downs, when are we at our baseline is really important so that we can wait out a full cycle and have that clarity through feeling through it. And so one of the things that I always recommend with any authority, not just emotional, but this is really for like the big things, right? It's not for we're going to have for breakfast tomorrow, like cereal or oatmeal. No, these are for like friendships, relationships, if you're about to move, and career. So those four big areas, it's best that you give yourself as much time as you can to really make a sound decision for you. Then we start talking about healing, right? Because if knowing those things alone, right? Because you were saying you would make yourself like, what do I look like? Knowing those things alone wasn't healing enough. Then you get into the openness. So when you have definition in your chart, this is energy that you put out into the world, into the ecosystem. But when you have openness, these are areas where you take in energy from the time that you're born, really, because you're taking in energy from your parents, their conditioning, and then you go to school, you meet friends, and you don't want to stand out, right? You want to fit in. So you conform, you sacrifice little pieces of yourself. Then, right, love, relationships as we get into our teenage years and adult life. And then society, right? The whole entire time, all of those little things are happening on. Like society is programming us with messages and marketing and all of these things and cultural, all of that. And so we start to have these beliefs. We start to see people saying the same thing. And because in our areas of openness, we don't have a consistent way of dealing with energy. We latch on to what's consistent, which oftentimes is our family. Imprinting. And so when I look at your chart, you have openness in your head, your ajna, your G center, and your spleen. And so I love this because I also have openness in my head and ajna. So I speak from the wisdom that can be gained there. But the head, when you're in your not self and that's what we call the openness. Like if you're in the shadow of whatever that thing is in your chart, we call it the shadow. So the not self of the head center is, am I trying to answer everyone's questions? And the ajna asks, am I trying to convince everyone that I'm certain? And so these two together, you can imagine, especially if 7 out of 8 people actually have either of these centers open in some way. you can imagine how we're taking in inspiration all the time. And we live in a society that says you can't just dream. You have to have a plan in order to make it happen. And then you start trying to be certain about the dream that you have, and you start trying to answer everyone's questions to prove that you're certain. And then you're exerting all this energy.
So true.
Right? Then we go down to the G center. And so for our listeners who do pull their charts, you'll see that there are 9 energy centers, not 7. The chakra model is a part of this, but we had a split where the heart center split into 2. So we now have our G center and our heart will center, which I love that you have definition at least one of these. So you can be like, oh, yes, this is,
Thank God.
I'm not going for that. And then the second split was the solar plexus split into our spleen and our emotional solar plexus. So with the openness in your G center, the G center is the center for love, identity, direction. It also homes the magnetic monopole in human design, which is a one-way magnet that if you think of yourself as like a train on the train tracks, it's pulling you forward. It's bringing people, opportunities, different things into your environment for you to use that authority. And so when you have openness in this G center, sometimes there can be a question of, am I lovable? Do I know who I am? And so I love the way one of my mentors talks about the G center is like, if you have definition in your G, it's kind of like you go to a restaurant and you look at the menu, right? You can choose different things, but it's kind of like set. But when you have this openness in your G, it's like life is like a mega buffet. You can take what you want. You can just here and there, you can leave it. And so it can be really uncomfortable sometimes because it almost sometimes feels like you don't have a home necessarily, something that you can go back to. But when you relax into the gift of, well, I'm not supposed to. I'm here to play. I'm here to try this and try that, especially with your 3 line. I'm here to do all these things. I'm here to expand and grow. Which, speaking of that expansion and growth, with some of that openness, especially in your spleen, the not self that comes out of the spleen is, am I holding on to people, to patterns that are no longer good for me? And so sometimes those two can work hand in hand, because if you are questioning your lovability, and I know we've talked about this as well, because we bonded over narcissistic people.
Yep. Not a great thing to be bonding over, but
I know, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we can start to see the story that gets formed, even just looking at those base level things. And then the more you unpack the gates, the gifts, where they are in the planets and how those have themes, like you just get even more and more depth to who
you can
you
go
are.
deeper and deeper for sure. But as you were talking, my God, I was like, damn, she's describing my life. And I got quite a bit of life behind me here to look back at, right? So especially when you said about the home part, like, damn, girl. It's interesting that a few months back, I was a guest on a podcast, and something that came out of my mouth that I didn't even know that that's how I felt. But I said, I don't even know what home is for me. I actually said that. It was in context to what we were discussing.
Obviously.
But I was talking about how I moved so many times. Yeah. Like I lived in different countries. I lived in different, even within the same country, like I'm in Canada, as you know. So in being here, I moved a lot, alone, with people, with family. It was just, I was all over the place, right? Yeah. Figuring things out, not sticking to one thing. Jobs, the amount of jobs that I did and the variety. Yeah. I mean, people now are like, okay, Rania, what job are you doing now? Okay, let's see what you're coming up with now. But like, yeah, I'm doing this. They're like, okay, well, that's new for you. I don't think I've ever done something where someone is saying to me, okay, well, yeah, you've done that before. I'm always hearing, well, that's new for you.
Yeah.
Like my resume, I mean, I have to cut out things that don't make any sense because like, what is this, right? Like you're all over the place. It was interesting. You said it, like you explained it based on my chart. And that is exactly what's been happening, right? That's been the story of my life, I guess. But having said that, as you were talking as well, I feel that the inner work that I've been doing on myself in healing myself, there were some aspects of what my human design would be is now shifting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is confirmation that I'm healing, you know, that I'm actually being aligned with my authentic self, right? When you were explaining how to sleep on it when we were going to make a decision, think about it. I do that now. I've been doing that for a while since I've been done the healing work, right? Where I don't rush into things. Maybe before I was, right? Now I'm not as much. I'm taking my time with it. So it's great that I can, like, it's a real example. It's a real
Yeah.
example. You're talking about my chart as who I am, who I'm supposed to be, with the open part and all of that. And it's true.
Oh no, I wasn't talking about who you're supposed to be. I have a habit of doing that. Actually, I talk about the openness and the negative because that's usually where people are. But
And
this
can
actually,
relate and can
yeah,
relate too because it's tangible, right?
exactly. Like one of the things that I learned as I transitioned from traditional to quantum human design was that I learned traditional language, it's designed to speak to the not self. It's designed to wake you up, right? Have that feeling of like, damn, that's my life. That's me. It's
Yeah.
supposed to wake you up and to initiate that journey of healing and deconditioning.
Mm.
Quantum human design is the awakened expression of like it's for the person who's been deconditioning for a while and they're finding that the traditional language is just a little bit limiting and they need a different level to tap into. And so that's kind of where I am now, especially when it comes to parenting and reparenting. So I just want to let you know, like if you have those open centers, yes, that can be the story of who you are, but it's not the awakened expression of who
Mm.
you are. And Rania just did a beautiful job even pointing out some of the things that she's been healing through her own inner work. That inner work, that self-awareness is so important.
Mm-hmm. A brief stop at a station. If you have a story to share and feel called to tell it, if you want to share your expertise on this show, please send an email to guest@healingtrain.ca. To join me on a journey of healing and recovery, connect with me. My calendar link is in the description. This show is proudly sponsored by Say It Out Loud GG, led by the inspiring Judith Diaz, an avid change maker and passionate advocate for speaking up and raising awareness. The Healing Train podcast is honored to have her support. Now let's get back to the show. I'm glad that we're talking about this. That brings me into talking about your work, that what you're doing and how, what can someone expect when they're coming to you? I know you're a coach, you're a writer, you're many things, but when we're talking specifically about human design, if someone is interested to speak with you about their chart, to understand themselves better and all of that, what does it look like when someone comes to you? And how can they connect with you, of course?
For sure. So the main thing that it looks like is pulling your chart. That's always the place I have people start on my site, Diamond Drip Consulting, which I'm sure will be somewhere in the show notes.
Yep, yep.
You can pull your free human design chart and just kind of start to look at the descriptions and see how it resonates. Usually I find that if your time of birth is accurate, because that's usually the biggest determining factor. Most people know their birth date. Most
Yeah,
people know the city where they were born.
yeah. It's the birth
um,
time that becomes tricky.
Exactly. You can really start to try things on, and then immediately after you pull your chart, I actually have an automation sent to send you a cheat sheet. It's a little ebook, help you decode some things.
Mm-hmm.
There are some resources sent because when I want what I want, there's about 5 emails that go out in that sequence, and they're directing you to different free resources, improve your health by design, decode your design, subscribe to my YouTube channel because I have a playlist on there about different facets of human design.
Wow.
Because when someone gets through that sequence, when someone really starts to unpack some of these things, I want for them on that reading to be like, I learned this and this about myself, and I learned this, but I just need to, like, I've learned a lot
Yeah,
through this tool.
yeah.
I just need someone to make it right? Because there's some things that I'm like, I'm not sure where that's coming from. Like that's where I light up. I'm like, oh, so you've done some of the work, you've started trying to experiment,
Mhm.
and now you're ready for that transformation. You're like, okay, I see where I learned how to be who I am. I see the potential of who I could be, and I want to make that change. That's where I meet people. But it usually starts with them just kind of pulling their chart and just kind of dipping their toe.
Yeah. Yeah. Can it be overwhelming, Diamond, for someone? Yeah.
Especially like when we talk about healing in quantum human design, I learned that our charts look like our grandparents' charts.
Mm,
And so our parents had to essentially parent their parent in certain ways.
mm,
And so there's always this generational loop of reparenting that's happening. And it's not always easy. I was actually just doing some inner work this morning, and I realized like why I was starting to why I have been, right? I've been kind of with the understanding of without definition, my heart center, I sometimes struggle with self-worth. And I've been
mm,
changing the story around that narrative. But then this morning, I learned that because my mom didn't have definition in her root, and I did,
mm,
that sometimes when I would want things, especially because I'm a 5/1, and I would come with like a really researched, very persuasive,
mhm.
like sound
Yeah.
reason for what I wanted, because she had no definition in her root, just the energetic dynamics, it felt like pressure. It felt like I was manipulating her sometimes. And because she didn't have the language or the awareness to know that what was happening, I was essentially made wrong for wanting what I want, even when it had a logical reason and facts and stuff to back it up. And so now that shows up in sales conversations. I kind of just fly by my
Mm,
offers. I'm like, yeah, we could do all this work. And then, I have this thing, if you want, and trying to make it like not pressured. And
mm,
it's like at the end of the day, one of the things that I am working through now and moving forward with is it doesn't feel like pressure. The right person will be relieved that there is an aligned next step for them. And just changing the stuff. It's not easy, right? I say that so easily here in the moment now with you, right? But in sales conversations, how did the energetics show up? How
yeah.
does the pressure feel to my nervous system? How can I regulate that energy to actually make the shift to be better? So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. But can we heal, Diamond? Can we heal, or at least can it help us in our healing journey? That's the best way to say it. Can it help us, human design, knowing our human design, can it help us heal our patterns of unhealthy behaviors, like we said, toxic relationships, reclaiming our power, our self-worth, knowing that, hey, that's who I am and I'm proud of it and there's nothing to be ashamed of, you know? Can it do that and how does it do that?
Absolutely. So I feel like how it does that is through awareness. And I feel like sometimes I want to over explain awareness, but like you can't, like how you can't over explain consciousness. Like there's so many different versions of it.
Mm,
But even when I look at just generationally, my grandparents, they had undefined G centers and they questioned their lovability. They questioned their place in the world, especially growing up in the South. And growing up in the South before civil rights movement. And
mm,
so these manifestors, these initiators who had all of these brilliant ideas but couldn't, they literally had to work against their body. And then they raised my mom, manifesting generator, wanting to try all of these beautiful things and just kind of explore life. And they're like, no, you have to do this. You have to get a government job. You have to have what is safe.
yep.
And then, her raising me, and here I come with a defined gene. And I know who I am, and I have defined, solar plexus, and I feel strongly about things, and I know where I want to go. And she's just like, how can you know that? So, and I say this so confidently because I was called out on this with my daughter Taylor, because I have undefined will center and she has definition.
Mhm.
And sometimes I look at her and I'm like, how can you just want what you want so strongly? Like you just believe you deserve, like you were just acting up in school and you believe that you deserve these things. Like you're really pushing for them and just having that loop. So yes, healing is possible because now I get to, with awareness, right? The tool helps you have awareness. I get to say, instead of being jealous or nitpicky at why she is just so able to be that way, I can look at it as saying like, oh, the generational healing is happening. She, because of some of the work that I'm even doing on myself, showing up fully as myself, she gets to do that now too. And without shame, without guilt. The things that I would be asking her, how can you, like that would create like, dang, should I not want what I want? Right. And then that's how we keep not healing.
Yes, yes. Well, you caught it. You caught it right on, right? And I did too earlier, if you recall, when we were talking about being asked the question, like if we work at the place, right?
Yeah.
And I immediately, as I said that to you, I was like, well, okay, well, let me shift that, instead of thinking, why are these people thinking that, I work here and I'm almost feeling like it's an insult in a way, right? Why don't I shift that and say, well, it must be something about my energy, about my aura. I must be comforting somehow, approachable somehow, that someone really wanted to talk to me and just said, oh, can I ask you where this is? Even though I don't work there. So it's not an insult, right? So it's, yeah, these are just examples that we are bringing up here. And these are practical
Yeah.
day-to-day life because see, when we're dealing with alternative healing and different holistic modalities, there's a lot of people out there saying this is all the woo-woo, right? The term that's going around. This is woo-woo. And they're saying, well, how does that relate or how does it help me in my day-to-day life? And that's why when I have these conversations with amazing guests with like yourself here on the show with expertise, I like to always bring it together to say, well, what practical ways, what are strategies, how do we relate it to our day to day? So those same people who are saying, oh, how does that help me? Well, here's how it helps you. It's not woo woo anymore, right?
Yeah.
When you're breaking it down. Right. And that's probably part of my manifesting generator quality right there, working through it.
Yeah.
Diamond, I realized something that we talked about all of those qualities, but we didn't say the different types there are in the human design. So now we're at the end of our episode. Let's do that. Can you share with us all the types that are in human design?
For sure. So depending on who you ask, there are 4 or 5. That's really just a nerd factoid because one's a hybrid. So some people are like, the hybrid counts.
Okay.
So we have our manifestors, which, like I said earlier, they are initiators, our catalysts, really here to create change and innovation. Then you have your generators who are like the little energizer bunnies. They just go and go and go, especially when they're doing work that they love. They are here to lean into work that lights them up. Then you have your manifesting generators, so the hybrid of that energy, right? You. Then you have your projectors who they make up about 20% of the population. They are our guides. They're here to really master what it is that lights them up in their own way and to wait for the right recognition to share that wisdom so that they can help the people who they need to help. Then you have the last type, which are our reflectors. And I always get so excited. I actually just had a reflector in one of my online workshops. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. And obviously, I didn't explain until later why she was so amazing because it was at the beginning. But they make up less than 1% of our population. They are our unicorns. If I'm talking about openness amplifying energy, every single one of their energy centers are open. They are constantly taking an energy and amplifying it and figuring out how do I know who I am, if I'm in the right environments, if I'm in the right places. And that's because there are barometers. They reflect back to us how we're doing. If you put a reflector inside of a environment that's sad, they're going to take that energy and it's going to amplify back out. And it's just a sad pity party for everyone. They're in a room, a party, things are jamming, things are bumping. And I've noticed this with this reflector. She used to be a client of mine. I was like, that's why. that's why I always like being around you. You were reflecting my energy. Like we were just excited together.
Yeah.
So that's the potential that reflectors have.
I love it. I love it. It's interesting now. As you're talking, I'm thinking about all of my friends. I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
I think that one could be this one. I mean, there's no way of knowing 100%, but it's a
Yeah.
guess based on how they show up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, now I think I know a reflector in my life, a good friend of mine. Oh my God,
Mhm.
bless her. Oh my goodness, this has been quite a conversation, Diamond. I think you and I can go on and on, right? Like we can just continue on and never end. I love speaking with you. I really do. You're just your energy. I love your energy. I
Thank
really do. I want us to end this beautiful episode by asking you to give us practical strategies for empowerment. Okay, for
you.
someone out there who feels stuck, confused, don't know what to do, other than encouraging them to go check out their chart. You know, if
Mhm.
they're not able to do that right now, okay, for whatever reason. I mean, they can go and get the free chart and just try to understand it themselves. But if they want someone to walk them through it, right? Of course, there are always costs involved with these things. So if they're not able to and they feel disempowered, anything that you can suggest, whatever you feel
Yeah.
called to say.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that if you're not able to do the chart, you're not ready for your chart, I would say to start very simple with understanding the basics of whatever it is that is um, affecting you in this way. And so what I mean by that is when I was trying to understand more of how I could attract more of what I wanted, because I realized that what I was putting out was obviously bringing me back like more of what I don't want. And I was like, how do I change that? So obviously people talk about the law of attraction a lot, but I literally studied the 12 universal laws. Like I would go and just like, and so I'm like, oh, like when I really like someone now, I'm like, oh, the right? Yoga, namaste. The divine spark in me sees the divine spark in you. Yes. So that was really helpful. And some of well, a lot of us, we equate our worth with money sometimes because we live in a society that quantifies
Yeah.
people through numbers, credit scores, bra size, all of these things. And so for me, it was like, okay, what's the deal with this money thing? And so just even looking and understanding that money, it started off as like exchanging. And then we went to these gold coins. And then because we were using boats, they started like cheating the gold coins so that the boats wouldn't be super heavy. And then they started writing these things. And it was like, if you wrote on this paper that it meant this, then it meant that. And then that's kind of how money was born. And it's a system. It's a system that's breaking. I don't know what's next, but
Yeah.
it's a system. And so just even understanding, like, why am I like literally, if I think about it, I'm a soul having a human experience. Did my soul choose to come here and worry about these little things like money and competition and you're right, I'm wrong? Like, did I really come here for these things? And just getting that bigger picture perspective of it. So that's what helped me aside from human design. Oh, of course, therapy, right? Therapy is always great.
I love that. I love the thumbs up. I love it. Yes, definitely. There are different ways
Yeah.
of getting the help, but if someone is just wants to do it on their own, giving them some tips that they can manage on their own, like something to start with, and then when they're ready, they can explore, right? And it's a journey that we're all on. We're at different stages in our journey. Like if I were to go back in my early 20s, I wasn't ready for certain
Yeah.
conversations, for certain wisdom and knowledge. So I think the universe was passing things towards my path slowly, slowly. I eased into it, you know, like certain books coming your way that gets you to open up your mind, and then you're ready for the next one. Then you're ready for the next one. Now, certain books come my way, and I could recognize that I've passed that already. And I'm not saying that in an egotistical way whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying that I now recognize the work that I've done, how far I have come. So certain books don't do it for me. That would have been good if I had read it back then. But I got what I needed already from a different book, so it did the job. So now this book is what's ready for me now, right? And I continue on the journey and the stages that we're on. And so is human design. You know, human design may come into your life now and you hear about it, but you're not ready to do anything with it until maybe 5 years later. I don't know, maybe tomorrow. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But when it calls you, you'll know.
Yeah.
You'll know.
100%.
It's like me with Reiki. I got introduced to Reiki, I want to say in 2014, 15, something like that, through a friend of mine who went and got in her Reiki course 1 and then 2, and then she was able to practice. And I was always intrigued by it. 5 or 6 years after that, maybe more. Yeah, anyways, a few years later is when it called me.
Yeah.
And then I went ahead with the courses and being a practitioner now. So it's all about timing, you know. Don't shame yourself for where you are, ever. You are who you are. If you're making mistakes, errors, that's okay. You're meant to do them because you're meant to learn from them. If we reframe the experiences that happened instead of being caught up right away into our victimhood story, into blaming, into shaming, to pointing fingers, let's look at ourselves, which bring it back again to the quotation that I read at the beginning of the episode, which is, let's not always point outwards. Let's twist that and just say, okay, well, what is it in me? And let's do the inner work, right? This is all about us doing the inner work. And when we do that, we are on our journey of healing. We're on the healing train today, and we're doing some of that. So that was corny. But that's okay.
I know, right?
Had to bring that in. Right? But anyways, it was amazing having this conversation with you, Diamond. Thank you so much for everything you shared. And love for us to meet again on another platform, maybe yours, maybe mine again. But I'm pretty sure that this is not the last time we will be having a conversation like this, where we can help others on their journeys. Thanks for riding along with me on the healing train. I hope today's journey brought you a little more peace, insight, and maybe even a few smiles. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and share so others can hop on board and benefit too. If you are on a healing journey and want to work with me, connect on Facebook or on Instagram at R2R Coaching. All the links are in the description. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss a stop on the healing train journey. And until next episode, keep on healing you.